Fox 38 Grip 2 damper. Came out in 2021. Ooh, that's oil. The Grip X definitely has a more girthy shaft going on than the old school Grip 2. It's kind of the pencil style. We got the Temu top cap tool. Worked fine for that one. Doing, 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 doing. Okay, so the Grip X damper is definitely rocking the Motor X oil. It looks like actual oil, not that Teflon junk. So in a way, they've kind of simplified this one, but I can see a substantially more amount of shims than the Grip 2. And right away, definitely bigger. So let's get these taken apart and see what they look like inside. So I'm going to basically define all the parts as I go through them to make sure you understand, because I actually had to study every component and what it does myself. Here's the main piston. That's the main reason to take this apart. We're going to look at the difference in size. After many years of taking suspension apart, reading the comments, studying the motocross suspension Bible book, I found the best definition of suspension parts on the entire internet, coming to us from the DVO website. So this massive mess on the table is the valving. This one particularly is called the compression valving. So when the fork is compressing, all this stuff is controlling how fast the fork compresses. Valving is a combination of check valves, holes, ports, shims, and springs. The best valving arrives out of a piston with a series of shim stacks. These are the shim stacks, these high quality steel washers. When combined together with the main piston, this is the main piston right here. We want to create a smooth yet linear flex pattern when the oil is flowing around them. Shims provide resistance to the oil flow through the main piston at various speeds. The lower amount of shims used typically means the damping quality is less. Systems that only use 1 or 2 shims deliver a harsh feeling at high speed hits, aka rock shock. Unfortunately, many so-called high performance suspension designs, rock shock, use very few shim stacks and only small ports, small holes to control the damping forces. If your clickers feel ineffective or have a very small range, this is due to improper piston design or shim stack design. You do have to understand you get what you pay for. RockShox stuff is typically substantially cheaper than Fox, and Suntour is even cheaper than RockShox, and the damping is definitely more primitive. The mission of the valving is to control the compression damping. So this is just basically controlling the oil flow when the fork is compressing. This is what gives your bike the feeling of plushness or stiffness. Compression determines how fast the suspension can compress when it's hitting a bump. If your suspension is too stiff, it will not compress fast enough to absorb the bump. When there's not enough compression damping, the bike has a soft, mushy feel and will compress into its travel with little damping resistance. Let's dive into the valving Grip 2 versus Grip X2. So first component on the compression valving assembly is the base valve. Sometimes brands will call this different stuff. So a base valve is located in the fork's leg or shock reservoir. Its general function is to control high-speed compression. It is a fixed piston that is non-adjustable. So if this controls the high-speed damping or the high-speed compression, let's define high-speed damping. High-speed damping comes into effect on fast, rough, technical trails, G-outs, hard landings, etc. So essentially, the BV, the base valve, controls how the fork's going to ride under really fast shaft speeds when the fork is going really fast. Not necessarily you going very fast. A riding example of high-speed damping would be when the fork is nearing the end of its travel and it's moving very fast. The larger main piston inside of the Grip X compression assembly is definitely behaving better than the Grip 2. The shim stack assembly inside of the Grip X damper is substantially more sophisticated than the Grip 2. As we just learned in the previous part of this video, the lower amount of shims used typically means the damping quality is less. So the Grip X is going to have a better quality damping. So let's move into the next component on the compression assembly. So this thing is basically part of the mid valve. So we need to define what a mid valve does in a compression assembly. Mid valves play a very important function in long travel forks to prevent them from diving. So inside of the Grip X damper compression assembly, we definitely have a very updated mid valve assembly. So over here is the Grip 2 mid valve assembly, and it's definitely smaller, and I'm going to say less sophisticated, and is lacking a spring. There is definitely a major design update in the Grip X mid-valve assembly. We have a whole stack of washers and a spring. It's also supersized. So inside of the Fox marketing, they didn't cover too much of the mid-valve because this is some high-level stuff that I had to study quite a bit. But after basically reading the DVO website, it is a very simple function and feature. Everything inside of the Grip X damper is supersized. So this one is the Grip X and this is the Grip 2. So it is the high-speed compression adjuster hat. Every brand has their own technical name for this stuff. What this thing does, it's going to put more preload on the shim stacks and the springs below it. That larger shaft on the Grip X compression tube assembly I showed you in the beginning of the video houses a larger internal floating piston. The Grip 2 is definitely smaller. I don't know what's the benefit of having a smaller, bigger internal floating piston after a lot of Google researching, but feel free to leave some more comments. I can tell you the IFP makes servicing this, taking it apart, a lot easier than a bladder. The low speed compression is handled inside of this needle. So the low speed compression is probably the most simple form of damping from every fork damper I've took apart. Basically a needle just threads in, and this controls the speed of the low speed movements. So one reason forks and shocks with high speed compression are a lot more expensive is all this junk on the table. We've got the nerd aspect down, but you gotta click this video on your screen when you see how all this stuff rides.